Hey everybody, Sean here with SE Shirts and Hoodies, and today I'm going to be doing a long-awaited video that everybody's been asking me for. Not everybody, but a lot of people. I'm going to be digitizing logo today for Joe out at Hard and Hustle Printing. So right after the intro, we're just going to get right into it. Alright, so pretty much this is the logo. I've already downloaded it into Adobe. He wants Puff, so one thing that I always try to do is I always try to look at the logo first and try to see where I want to go with it. So in this case, what I'm going to try to do is leave this circle solid and pretty much lay this down as a satin stitch, the outline, and then make the inside of his logo a puff, if that makes any sense. So pretty much the first thing that I'm gonna have to do is take this inside part, since there's really nowhere to click right here, so it doesn't have that outline. So if I were to take this over here and move this too, there's nothing behind it. So what I'm gonna do is just put a stroke on it. Now I'm gonna put the stroke, instead of it being from the center out, I'm gonna align it from the outside out. So I'm just gonna change the stroke color just so I could kind of see what I'm doing. And pretty much you'll see it just fills in where I need it. So we'll go about right there. And that's pretty much kind of what I want. So I'm going to export it as a PNG. We're just going to put this logo. And then I use Hatch. It's real easy to use. A lot of people might use the digitizing software that comes with the Racoma or any other embroidery machine. But pretty much this is what I use. This is what I'm comfortable using. It's easy to work. So I just grab the artwork, import it. And one thing that I've realized in the past is if it imports at this size and you digitize it, when you shrink it, you're going to lose a lot of details, and it's just going to be a headache. You're going to have to redo it. So usually what I'll do is I'll just size it to about where I want it. So we're going to say maybe 2 inches. It's going on a hat, so we'll leave it about right there. Actually, the first one's gonna go on a shirt and then on a hat, so it doesn't really matter. We'll just make it about 2 inches. I'll right click it and I'll just lock it. And that's pretty much like how I start digitizing. So there's a couple ways that we could go about it. We could either use the auto digitizing software that comes with this. Just click on auto digitize right here. And as long as we have the artwork selected, we could just click on auto digitize and it'll pretty much digitize it for you. So you click OK, and it'll digitize for you. See, but when you digitize artwork like this, like it combines stuff together. So like you kind of have control, but you don't really have control. Like you can see these have jump stitches, and to me, that's just, you could go in here, it's just not feasible. So you could go in here and you could move this around and you could delete it. You can play with the stitch angles of everything, but pretty much how I'm going to do it, how I'm thinking about doing it in my head is this is going to be a satin stitch and this is going to be puff. So this is going to have to overlay a little bit so it kind of just has that white in the background, because right now everything's cut out perfect, so it's just not going to be perfect in my eyes. So I'm just going to delete all this and I'm just going to manually digitize everything. Some people might not agree with me, some people might, but either way, this is just how I'm choosing to do it. So I'll lock the artwork, delete all this other stuff, and I'll pretty much just start going. So digitize, I'll start with that circle in the background. And there's my circle. So I kind of start from the back and then come to the front. Even though that doesn't look like a perfect circle, let me see if I can redo it. All right, so that looks a lot better. I'll just go to my select and I'll just enlarge it to where I need, and you can see it lines up pretty good. So there's that, and I'll just turn it to an outline just so I can see what's going on behind it. Next thing I'm going to do is try to digitize all this outside part. Then I'm going to come back and digitize the puff, because really, like, when you're digitizing stuff, you kind of have to look at it. Sorry, that's the DTG. Whenever it stops. Anyway, so when I'm digitizing, I try to look at it like in layers of how I want it to digitize. So, or how I want it to sew out. So being that here's the H, here's the other H, and then here's the P. How I'm thinking about doing it is the Ricoma or the embroidery machine stitching this middle part first, and then stitching it from this side up, and then from the P, I want it to stitch from here around. So it kind of like gives it different layers. So yeah, let's just get started. I go to digitize closed shape and I'll zoom in. This artwork doesn't look that good for some reason. All right, so you always want your artwork to be as good as possible. So let me just unlock it, delete it. And he sent me a few different files, so let me see if we can use this one. So I'm just try this. All right, so that's pretty close to where we were at before. Again, I'll just lock the art, and then I'll just, this one looks a little bit better. This was another one that he sent, so we'll just try to work with this. I go to digitize closed shape, and on this software, pretty much, this is basically your pen tool. So you could hit fill or outline, and it'll pretty much do it. So if you're good with the pen tool in Adobe Illustrator, you'll be good with the pen tool in here. So digitize closed shape, and then I'll just right click. Left click is a straight line, and right click is to make it round. All right, so there's our outside line. What I like about this program is up here at TrueView, you could either make it like how it's really going to look with stitches, or you can make it kind of see-through. So that's something that that I really think saves you a lot of time. But pretty much after I did that outside line, like there's several ways you could do this, but I find that this is pretty easy. So this is just kind of what works for me. I feel like I have more control. So um, I'll just digitize holes in it. So after I do that, I'll just come back. Well, all right, so what I'm just kind of thinking right now is I want this part, the middle part, to kind of overlay on the white. So it's either I have to make the HHP bigger or I have to make the white bigger. So pretty much what I'm going to try to do is just digitize, but cut a hole that's a little bit smaller so that when I do digitize the HHP and I put the puff on it, it kind of overlays on the back stitch. So I'm gonna go about, I don't know, maybe about right there. And pretty much that's just what I'll do all the way through. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you kind of just want to give it a little bit of room because the inside isn't really going to matter as much as the outside. The outside, you kind of want it to look perfect. The inside, it doesn't really matter too much because everything else is just gonna, the black's just gonna be sitting on it. So I could hit enter and it'll connect it, enter again, and it cuts it out. So that's pretty much my outline right there. Go to TrueView, and I'm gonna come back through and kind of fix everything. So it's gonna look a lot better. So the next thing, pretty much I just go to close shape because this is what works best for me, and just do the same thing that I did for the rest of the stuff, just kind of like using the pen tool. So, and this might come out good, it might not. I don't really know. So hopefully it comes out good. So there's that, TrueView. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect because most of this is gonna hide underneath the puff. So go back to digitizing holes. And I want this all the way cut out perfectly. So this is the part that I'm gonna try to get as close as I can. Hit enter twice and it cuts the hole out. So see, it looks a little bit more perfect. And if I change it to, when I change it to satin, like it looks messed up right there, but then in the end is where you want to come through and come right here and click add stitch angles. And this is pretty much kind of where you want all the stitches to go. So I'll come through and I'll just add all my angles so it looks nicer. Hit enter and you can see it looks 100 times better. So on to the next one. I'm gonna do this one real quick and we'll move on to the next part. All right, so there we go. You can change the, I always try to get all my like foundation laid down of exactly what I'm gonna be doing, and then I'll come back and play with the stitches and make the adjustments that I need to adjust and all that type of stuff. So these really don't matter what they lay on. Pretty much that's kind of where we're at. So now what I'll do is I'll just come back through and same thing that I did before. I'll just digitize the close shape, but this time I'm gonna get right on the black. So, and I'll just go through the whole thing again. So So if we turn back on TrueView, we kind of see where everything is at. The Heart and Hustle, the printing established in 2017. I'll deal with that at the end because I probably have a font that matches it, so it makes it easier. So I'll just unlock everything, and pretty much that's our foundation right there. So this circle, I could fill it. We'll say it's black. I could go through and I could change the angle of everything. One thing with circles is if the angle of your stitches, like let's say the angle of these stitches are 100 or 0 degrees, so they're going perfectly left to right with the Tajami stitch or Tatami stitch, my fault. So they're going left to right. If it's a circle, let me pull up another circle. So if it's a circle and it sews, we're going to say, for example, let's say your angle is like this. If it's a perfect circle, when it sews, it's pulling on both sides. So that's your pushing or your pull compensation is what they call it on Google. But these two sides are going to squeeze it in. So by the time it stitches all the way out, it's going to look more like this because it's naturally pulling the circle in. So when you digitize a circle, you really want to make it almost like that, so that when it sews out, it sews out like a circle. So like this circle, I'll pretty much stretch out both sides just a little bit. And if I stretch it out too much, when I sew it out just to practice, you'll see it. So it kind of looks funny right there, but it's going to look right when it sews out. So now I'll go through and I'll play with all my stitch angles. So I'll just go right here to where it says add stitch angles. So you can see how it looks right now. Once I hit enter, you can see the difference once you start adding all these stitch angles. And then if you don't like a certain, like right here, how they kind of start curving up way too soon, I'll just go back and reshape it, and I'll just retouch up my stitch angles. Right here, this one needs to come down. So that's pretty much done right there. I'll unhide this. And let's say we just change it to any color for the sake of this. So this is what's going to be puff. So this part right here is just going to kind of overlay everything. I might have messed up, to be honest with you. See, because it just kind of left me in the same situation as before. What I wanted to do was have this run under and then over, see, and then it just didn't come out like that. So I'm gonna have to redo it. And these are the things that happen when you're doing this too. So I haven't done this logo before, obviously. It just, things happen. So we're just gonna delete it and redo it. It seems like it's time consuming, but at the end of the day, you want everything to come out right. So we're just gonna, we want this to come down and then this to come over. So we might have to use these digitizing blocks. So All right, so everything's pretty much done besides the uh, heart and hustle. So we'll turn on our TrueView and we'll kind of start seeing how everything's laying. Um, it's laying good. That's kind of how I want it. I think it's going to look good. So I'll wait. Go back to our selection tool, and then this is kind of where the fun part is. So we can start putting sand stitches on everything. We pretty much know how it's going to lay. So when it comes to puff, a lot of people don't want to do puff, or they're afraid of it, or I'm not sure exactly why a lot of people don't want to do it. But basically, puff on this software is a click of a couple buttons. That's pretty much all it is. It's just allowing, it's just the comp. So let's just do one real quick. So on this, before we start editing, I go to manual spacing, and pretty much what this does is, let's say I put this number to 50. It's the space between each stitch. So being that I'm putting foam, I'll lower this to about 7. And you can see like the stitches are super close together compared to like the stitches in the background. So when I go to stitching up here, I don't want any type of underlay, because the underlay, let me just play it for you. So the underlay is, okay, so let me pause it. So the underlay, when you're doing puff and you have to put the foam down, this underlay is gonna push the foam down even more. So you don't want any type of underlay underneath the foam. The only thing you really want is just that edge stitch. So with that being said, I don't want no underlay. The only underlay that I like to use is an edge run, and even then, I like it medium. So all I did right there is, if we switch this to normal, this line right here is kind of where that edge run is going to be. But I like the stitches to flow over it, because sometimes it'll move and stuff. So I always like it at medium. I like to push it in just a little bit. And then this pull compensation, so this is how tight your string is. So if you just leave it on 8, it's like a really loose string. It's really tight. So when you're doing puff, you want it to be loose. So what I do is I put this to 22. And you could see it makes it look wider, but it's not wider, it's just looser string. So pretty much that exact same thing I'll do with all of them. So I'll take the underlay off, I'll switch that to medium, I'll put this to 22, I'll go back to my fill, manual spacing, and I'll put it to 7. Same thing with this. I'll put this one to 7. I'll take off the second underlay, edge run, medium, full compensation 22, and that's it. It's ready for puff. So this is when you kind of want to go back and say, okay, I want the circle to sew first. So the circle's pretty much already there. Then it's going to sew this underlay. So I don't want this underlay on. Edge run, I want it white, medium. So we'll turn that white. And then he wants everything else puff. So this is going to be white. Edge run, medium, white, edge run, medium, white. And then all the rest of this, I'm going to do it in black. So this is black. This is black. And this is black. So pretty much, let me see what this, So the circle is going to be kind of weird because you can see the underlay is going this way. So before we even start stitching sideways, it's going to pull it this way. So it's going to shrink this area, and it might not be a perfect circle. So I'm just going to take the second underlay off, because I know if I take that off, I know for sure it's going to stitch this way and it's going to squeeze it in. So if I want the fill to be like more filled in, I could just come right here to spacing and just add more stitches. And that's pretty much ready to sew out.